Hey guys, welcome back. So today we're gonna start with our book Battle for the Mind, and it is the mechanics of indoctrination, brainwashing, and thought control. So this is a book by William Sargent, and it was sold for a dollar and 45 cents by Pelican Books. So I'm gonna start reading it, and I'm gonna make my best effort to enunciate so that you can understand what I am saying. And we are gonna pause at some points, and we're going to discuss how this applies to gang stalking. All right. So this is the introduction. Listen. How can an evangelist convert a hard-boiled sophisticate? Why does a PW stands for prisoner of war? Why does a PW sign a confession he knows is false? How does a criminal pressure into admitting his guilt? Or how is a criminal pressure into admitting his guilt? Do the evangelist, the PW's captor, and the policeman use similar methods to gain their ends? These and other compelling questions are discussed in Battle for the Mind. William Sargent is a leading physician in psychological medicine, spells out and illustrates the basic technique used by evangelists, psychiatrists, and brain washers to disperse the patterns of belief and behavior already established in the minds of their hearers, and to substitute new patterns for them. This work is timely in our period of brainwashing hidden persuaders and the increasing delusion of psychiatry with mysticism and religion. It will stimulate the informed person interested in techniques devised by men in power to control the thought and destiny of their fellow men. This was written by the New York State Journal of Medicine. This book of immense significance for any person concerned with the ideological battle for the minds of men now being waged between communist and anti-communist forces around the world. By this definition, then, the book should be must reading for every person who takes the trouble to exercise all his precious capacity to think. This was a review by Providence Sunday Journal. Now, let's get started. We're gonna start, let's see, with another quote. This is before the book starts. It says, it's by George Salmon D.D. Salmon. And it's a sermon for the work of the Holy Spirit, 1859. We have still too much, we have still much to learn. Sorry, my dyslexia kicked in, apparently. We still have much to learn as to the laws according to which the mind and body act one on another, and according to which one mind acts on another. But it is certain that a great part of this mutual action can be reduced to general laws, and that the more we know of such laws, the greater our power to benefit others will be. If, when through the operation of such laws, surprising events can take place, and we cry out, such is the will of God, instead of setting ourselves to inquire whether it was the will of God to give us power to bring about or prevent these results, then our conduct is not piety, but sinful laziness. Wow. I'm not going to read the acknowledgments because I am super excited to start with this. So we are going to read the foreword, all right? There is a lot of parts that someone like underlined. This is so interesting. Okay, so let's start. Forward. It must be it must be emphasized. Let me lower this. There you go. It must be emphasized as strongly as possible that this book is not concerned with the truth or falsity of any particular religious or political belief. Its purpose is to examine some of the mechanism involved in fixing or destroying of such beliefs in the human brain. Some critics will perhaps doubt whether it is possible to separate the two parts of a whole in this way. But if a greater understanding of the problem is ever to be achieved, continued attempts must be made to do so. Having beliefs of my own and owing much to a religious upbringing, I am particularly anxious to give as little offense as possible to readers who may hold similar or quite different religious tenets. Yet, history records the angry outcry even when Newton tried to disentangle the simple mechanics of gravity from its religious aspects. That's very true. A deeply religious man himself, he was accused of trying to destroy religious faith in others. He could answer only that his work was concerned not with the ultimate question of why something happens, but with the immediate question of how it happens. And I must make the same plea for this very much humbler inquiry. Many people have pointed out, quite rightly, that the ultimate quest of both religious and political values is not definable in terms of how it happens, but of what is achieved. My concern here is not with the immortal soul, which is the province of theologian, nor even with the mind in the broadcast sense of the word, which is the province of the philosopher, but with the brain and the nervous system, which man shares with the dog and other animals. Yet it is through this material brain that emissaries of God or of the devil, dictators, policemen, politicians, priests, physicians, and psychotherapists of various sorts may all try to work, or gangstalkers, may try to work their will on man. It is not surprising, therefore, that arguments, I put in the word gangstalkers there, alright? Anything gangstalking related, it's me, alright? It is not surprising, therefore, that arguments often arise as to who exactly is doing what. This study discusses mechanistic methods influencing the brain, which are open to many agencies, some obviously good and some obviously very evil indeed. But it is concerned with the brain mechanics, not with the ethical and philosophical aspects of a problem, which others are very much more competent to discuss than I am. It must also be remembered that much of what is discussed here is still only a useful working hypothesis. A great deal of further research is needed before final conclusions are reached. My choice of Wesley for special study in the technique of religious conversion was prompted by my own Methodist upbringing. I became convinced of the tremendous power latent in his methods. Through these have now been abandoned by the church, which he built and strengthened by their use, and by most people. And most people will agree with social historians who insist that his conversion of large areas of the British Isles helped to save off political revolution at a time when Western Europe and North America were in a ferment or in actual revolt, largely because of the anti-religious materialistic philosophy with which Tom Paine, among others, was associated with John Wesley and his methods demand particular study at the present time for politician and priest alike, even if the hellfire doctrine he preached may seem outmoded. I have had to outside I I have had to go outside my own field of medicine for some of the material used in this book and apologize in advance for any inaccuracies due to this. But if progress and syntheses are ever to be achieved, in this age of increasingly departmentalized knowledge, someone has to risk leaping over walls into other people's territory. And it must not be held against me that I do not discuss some types of purely intellectual conversion, but only those physical or physiological stimuli, rather than intellectual arguments, which seem to help to produce conversion by causing alterations in the subject's brain function. Hence, the term physiology in the title. I have to acknowledge the advice and help of more people that can be mentioned by name, who have visited or worked with me either at home or in the USA. They are bound to find some of their viewpoints incorporated in my thinking, and I hope they will not wish it to be otherwise. In particular, I have to thank Dr. Elliot Slater and H.J. Shervin. Some of our work done together in England during and after the war is reported in the earlier chapters of this book and has been already published in joint papers by scientific journals. All the material on war neurosis here quoted has appeared in such journals, and references are appended. So everything that is mentioned in this, I already read this book once. I'm super excited to read it again, especially with you. Everything that is mentioned in this work, in this book, is actually reference, like it references the actual study. We might go on to some studies, we might go out of this book and into other studies in order to find more, to see more. So now it says, the Rockefeller Foundation made it possible for me to spend a valuable year at Harvard University and to see psychoanalytic teaching and treatment at close quarters. Let me emphasize that my discussion of psychoanalysis with illustrating some aspects of modern conversion and brainwashing techniques implies no denial of its very real value and the treatment of carefully selected patients. Another year spent by invitation at Duke University allowed me to study methods of religious revival, including the Christian snake-handling cults that flourish in the southern states. I also owe much to Doctors Howard Fabing and George Sutherland, with whom, while in the USA, I frequently discussed the relation of Parlov's work of two problems of human behavior. My thanks are also to Robert Graves. Word. Okay, so we got it. I'm just gonna start. I wouldn't want to read any more forward. So it's just really interesting. So we're gonna get started right away. Introduction. Let's see. Politicians, priests, and psychiatrists often face the same problem: how to find the most rapid and permanent means of changing a man's beliefs. When towards the end of World War II, I first became interested in the similarity of the methods which have from time to time been used by the political, religious, and psychiatric disciplines, I failed to foresee the enormous importance now attaching to the problem because of an ideological struggle that seems fated to decide the course of civilization for centuries to come. The problem of the doctor and his nervously ill patient, and what of the religious leader, and that of the religious leader who sets out to gain and hold new converts, has now become the problem of whole groups of nations who wish not only to confirm certain political beliefs within their boundaries, but to proselytize the outside world. What is proselytize? Let's see. To convert it, to attempt to convert from one religion, belief, or opinion to another. such as I have a normal life to I'm followed by a group of people and they have direct energy weapons being used against me. So, I mean, wouldn't you think that that is like some type of crazy manipulation? Like, literally, the fact that someone can convince you that there are direct energy weapons being used against you without touching you, without saying anything. Well, not without saying anything. There were things that are said, but without being with specifics, just with manipulation. That is the craziest thing. Now, to proselytize the outside world, Great Britain and the USA, therefore, find themselves at last obliged to study seriously those specialized forms of neurophysiological research, which have been cultivated with such intensity by the Russians since the revolution, and have helped them to perfect new methods of now popularly known as brainwashing or thought control. I'm so excited for this. In August 1954, the United States Secretary of Defense announced the appointment of a special committee to study how prisoners of war could be trained to resist brainwashing. He admitted the desirability of reviewing the existing laws, government agreements, and policies of military departments with regard to prisoners captured by nations of the Soviet orbit. So there is a reference that is to this thing called the mechanism of conversion. So when we're done with the book, we're actually gonna go on and check out some of the studies. So while we go over this book, we're not gonna do only one book because that's gonna get boring. So we're gonna be jumping from book to book. I'm gonna do a video on this. Then I'm gonna do another video on the art of logical thinking. I'm gonna do another video maybe on some more gang stalking things as more ideas to talk about, come to my mind. But I'm gonna keep a web of topics that are all related in one way or another. That way we can look deeper into the mechanisms of brainwashing, thought control from an actual and we're gonna go into Hinduism and into the science of the mind. So we're gonna check all of those topics, and that way we form a well-rounded education about why is it's gang stalking so effective. It's all back to gang stalking. This is literally like we're majoring in gang stalking, and these are the courses that we have to do in order for us to understand it. Pretty much. So this channel is pretty much like how to understand gang stalking to such a deep level that it's like that it makes it appear obvious, So okay, so now we are on the introduction, and it goes like this. This committee reported back to the president in August of 1955. And it was the U.S. government, and it's a POW. The fight continues after battle report of the Secretary of Defense Advisory Committee of Prisoners of War, U.S. Government Printing Office, 1955. In Great Britain too, the necessity for more vigorous research into the techniques of rapid political conversion has also been widely recognized. So a rapid political conversion can also be used as a conversion of like the conversion that I went through from someone who had their life together or someone who was successful in life to being turned into a total mess and a total disaster. And I feel like I was converted, but I was somehow able to be converted back, Okay, so now blah, blah, blah. Several days ago, for instance, Miss Charlotte Haldane pleaded that research should be undertaken into the psychological mechanism of the process by which she, the wife of a famous British scientist, had been converted to a belief in the official Russian interpretations of Marxian dialectics, and into that of her sudden reconversion to the Western point of view. After failing to detect the falsity of the Russian system for so many years, Kostler and many others have described very much the same experience in their own lives. And this is referred to the reference to The God That Failed, 6 Studies in Communism. So many people are also bewildered at the spectacle of an intelligent, hitherto mentally stable person who has been brought up for trial behind the Iron Curtain and prevailed upon not only to believe but to proclaim sincerely that all his past actions and ideas were criminally wrong. How is it done? They ask. It is not always realized that this can be the political equivalent of that kind of religious conversion, after which ordinary decent people suddenly come to believe that their lives have not only been useless but merit eternal damnation. That their lives have not only been useless but merit eternal damnation because some religious particular has been neglected. The same psychological process may also be seen at work in a patient undergoing psychoanalysis. He can be persuaded that anomalies in his behavior have been caused by intense hatred of his father, even though he has always acted in a devoted and affectionate manner towards him. How can people be induced to believe in what may contradict obvious fact? I'm going to repeat that. I'm going to repeat this question. How can people be induced to believe in what may contradict obvious fact? A general distinction should be made between the more gradual changes of outlook and behavior due to increasing age, experience, and reason, and the abrupt total reorientation of viewpoint, often brought up by others, which involve the surrender of strongly held belief and the adaptation of new beliefs often diametrically opposed to them. This totally and utterly ties into gang stalking, doesn't it? I just found this book randomly on the internet. I was just looking for psychology books because I wanted to learn more. But okay, I'm getting excited the more I read about it. Okay, now let's continue. This book will discuss some of the more important mechanistic and psychological aspects of this problem, and of how new ideas may be implanted and firmly fixed in the minds even of those unwilling to at first receive them, the targets. Interest in it was stimulated by chance circumstances 11 years ago. World War II provided medicine with rare opportunities for studying the breakdown of normal persons subjected to intense stresses. In England, at the time of the Normandy invasion in June 1944, special arrangements had been made to deal with the new crop of acute military and civilian neurosis resulting from this operation. One day, while traveling to an emergency neurosis center, soon after the start of the invasion, I stopped at an American neuropsychiatric hospital to visit a colleague, Dr. Howard Fabing. He had just been reading a book by the famous Russian neuropsychologist I.P. Parlov called Conditioned Reflexes and Psychiatry. I'm going to make a note of that because we're going to read that too. Parlov is huge. So Pavlov called condition. Give me a second. I'm gonna make a note. Let's see. Give me 1 second. Read Pavlov's conditioned reflexes and wait. Where is it? And psychiatry. Yeah, and psychiatry. For a second I thought it said and in psychiatry. And psychiatry. We might do this one and that one at the same time, but in another video. By the way, I did download someone commented about the FBI's something. I downloaded it and it's really interesting. I'm gonna check it out, see what's up. But listen, I'm gonna read it only if it can help us to understand gang stalking better. All right. Or the mind better, I might open the subjects of this channel later, but right now it is to help people who are targets. So let's see, blah, blah, blah. Okay, condition reflexes and psychiatry, and strongly advised me to do the same at once. This book consisted of a series of lectures given by Pavlov not long before his death in 1936 at the age of 86, but they had not become available in English until 1941. Stocks of the translation had been destroyed in the London Blitz that same year, but Dr. Fabian had managed to secure a copy. Like several other neuropsychiatrists of World War II, he had found Pavlov's observations on animals extremely useful for the better understanding of certain behavior patterns observed with human beings breakdown under abnormal stress. So yeah, gang stalking is definitely abnormal stress, beyond abnormal. Now, this is what's next. Pavlov's clinical description of the experimental neurosis which he could induce in dogs deprived, in fact, to have a close correspondence with those war neuroses, which we were investigating at the time. Also, many of the physical treatments that had gradually been developed by trial and error during the war to relieve nervous symptoms had obviously been anticipated by Pavlov as a result of his prolonged research in dogs. It was now clear that what was needed was a much more careful study certain of these findings, in their possible relation to human psychiatry that had recently been given them either in England or in America. So close were some of the similarities between these and canine neurosis that it seemed more improbable than ever that many current psychological theories about the origin of human neurosis and other abnormalities of behavior were correct, unless it be conceded that Pavlov's dogs had subconscious minds and also superegos, egos, and IDs, and the part played by alterations in the function of the human brain itself had also been too summarily dismissed by some in their attempts to explain the reasons not only for neurotic and criminal behavior, but for all the constant mental turns, reconsiderations, and adjustments which produce the so-called normal behavior in any given person as he reacts to his environment. When late in life, Pavlov began comparing the results of disturbances of brain function noted in his animals with those noted in human beings. This phase of the book was little studied outside of Russia, and many British American psychiatrists still neglected, although the relevant books have been now long been available in both countries. So these studies were not quite common in the United States because they were considered animal cruelty. And they completely just, these studies went to oblivion in the United States. That's why only people who are hard into psychology typically know of Parlov, or I don't know who else, but Parlov, I mean, at least to my knowledge, I never heard of Parlov until I read this book. The fact is that Parlov continues to be known principally for his laboratory experiment on animals, for which he was awarded the Nobel Prize, and most psychiatrists prefer a broader basis to their work a broader basis to their work than his simple mechanistic and psychological approach. Moreover, there is a certain repugnance with the Western world to Parlov's investigations. Cultural beliefs give man, in addition to his brain and nervous system, an independently acting metaphysical soul, which is assumed helps control his ethical behavior and dictate his spiritual values. In this strongly and widely held review, animals have brain but no souls, which makes odious to any comparison between behavior patterns of man and animals. And those studies of how animals' bodily system functions have admittedly been of great value in throwing light on the working of the human machine, this view persists even among some scientists almost as a test of moral respectability. I think all dogs go to heaven. You know, when you mistreat them, they go back to you. I think it's because they really have no other choice, you know, and because I think they know that most dogs are like generally treated well by humans, but there are always exceptions. You know, I think that dogs, you know, even though they're more animals than humans, I think that they must have like their little ego, don't you think? You know, I don't know. I've never had a dog, but I had many cats, you know, and they all had like the little different personalities, you know, and the more that we are exposed to like dog videos and cat videos on YouTube, you know that they have like their little egos. They have to. Well, anyways, psychiatric research in Great Britain has, however, become far more realistic since World War II. Drugs and other physical methods of treatment gave such undeniable results in the treatment of acute civilian military war neurosis. War. I'm Mexican, so I'm gonna say the war. Okay, war neurosis. That physiological aids to psychiatry were given a high research priority, and this policy has persisted. Indeed, it was the use of drugs in psychotherapy that first prompted the present study of Parlov's experimental methods of changing the behavior pattern of animals, and the mechanics behind historical technique of human indoctrination, religious conversion, brainwashing, and the like. Early in the war, during treatment of the acute neurosis resulting from the Dunkirk evacuation, the Battle of Britain, and the London Blitz, the value of certain drugs had become obvious in helping patients to discharge their pent-up emotions about the terrifying experiences which had caused their mental breakdowns. This method had been used on a more limited scale in peacetime practice by Stephen Horsley and others. As the war progressed and after it was over, experiments with a wide range of such drugs continued, and a good deal was learned about their properties. A drug would be administered to a carefully chosen patient by injection into a vein or inhalation. As it started to take effect, an endeavor would be to make him relive the episode that had caused his breakdowns. Sometimes the episode or episodes had been mentally suppressed, and the memory would have to be brought to the surface again. At other times, it was fully remembered, but the strong emotions originally attached to it had since been suppressed. The marked improvement in the patient's nervous condition was attributed to the releasing to these original emotions. It was also found that the emotions which were most profitably released or abrected. So this is a word that they use a lot. It's spelled Abreacted. I don't know how to pronounce it, and I want to pronounce it actually. It's abrected, abreacted. Psychoanalysis: release an emotion by abreaction. It's like reaction in aber, like se abre, like it opens. Let's say if we can like abrir in Spanish means to open, and abreaction, and it's like opening and action. It might be Latin for opening. Let's see, abri prefix meaning. Yeah, inflection of abrir. To open, to allow access through. Yeah. So now abreaction. Abreaction. Yeah, it's abreaction, like abreaction. Okay, cool. So abreaction. Oh man. Okay, or abreacted, as the psychiatric term is, where those of fear or anger. What? It was also found that the emotions which were most profitably released or abreacted, as the psychiatric term is, were those of fear or anger. Little could be done by making. What? It was also found that the emotions which were most profitably released or abreacted, as the psychiatric term is, were those of fear or anger. Little could be done by making. Little could be. Say a melancholic patient weep and become more depressed. Okay. Little which were most profitably. Little could be done by making. Say a melancholic patient weep up and be more depressed. Okay. I did not understand that sentence. It was also found that the emotions which were most profitably released or abreacted, as a psychiatric term is, were those of fear or anger. Okay, so fear or anger were when they were released, they were the most psychologically beneficial to the patient. And then there's a semicolon. Little could be done by making. Little could be done by making. Say, a melancholic patient weep or become more depressed. Okay. So if you abrogate a melancholic patient to cry or more depressed, it doesn't do anything. But fear and anger were the ones that actually created a change. That makes sense, doesn't it? Like in gag sucking, that's all you feel: fear and anger. Well, anxiety too. But yeah, like it starts making sense. A lot of things are making sense. So now, We're almost done with this. I'm just reading the introduction today, and then if I have time later on, we're gonna read the first chapter. So, our first reading of Parlov's book in 1944 coincided with the learning of some more facts about these drug treatments. It was found that a patient could sometimes be restored to mental health, not by his reliving a particular traumatic experience, but by stirring up in him and helping him to discharge strong emotions not directly concerned with it. Thus, in some of the acute Normandy battle neurosis and those caused by V-bombs explosions, quite imaginary situations to react the emotions of fear or anger could be suggested to a patient under drugs. Through, as a rule, these were in some way related to the experiences which he had undergone. Much better results could often indeed be obtained by stirring up emotions about such imaginary happenings than by making the patient relive actual happenings in detail. For example, it might be suggested under drugs to a patient who had broken down as a result of a tank battle. He was now trapped in a burning tank and must fight his way out. Through this situation really had never occurred, the fear that it might happen was perhaps a contributory cause of his eventual collapse. Outbursts of fear or anger, thus deliberately induced and stimulated to a crescendo by the therapist, would frequently be followed by a sudden emotional collapse. The patient, I feel like I did this to myself when I was getting gang stalked, for real. Like after every crazy narrative, I had like a burst of ecstasy. Literally. This is fucking insane. Emotional discharge. Not of the drug, but he would soon come around. Come round. It then often happened that he reported a dramatic disappearance of many nervous symptoms. If, however, little emotion had been released, and he had only had his intellectual memory, of some horrible episode refreshed, little benefit could be expected. But a falsely implanted memory might create a larger emotional discharge than the real and induce the psychological effects needed for psychological relief. A technique of deliberately stimulating anger or fear under drugs until the patient collapses in temporary emotional exhaustion was finally perfected with the help of Parlov's findings. Especially important to this were some observations he made on the behavior of his dogs after they had been almost drowned in the Leningrad flood of 1924. These will be discussed in later chapters. One afternoon, when this technique was being applied to the more normal victims of severe battle or bombing stress, it was less helpful in the treatment of chronic neurotics. I happened to visit my father's house and picked up one of his books at random. It was John Wesley's journal of 1739 to 1740. My eye was caught by Wesley's detailed reports of the occurrence 200 years before of almost identical states of emotional excitement, often leading to temporary emotional collapse, which he induced by a particular sort of preaching. This phenomena often appeared when he had persuaded his hearers that they must make an immediate choice between certain damnation and the acceptance of his own soul-saving religious views. The fear of burning in hell induced by his graphic preaching could be compared to the suggestion we might force on a returned soldier during treatment, that he was in danger of being burned alive in his tank and must fight his way out. The two techniques seem startlingly similar. I can see how burning in hell and burning inside a tank can be seen as very similar experiences. Modern Methodists are often confused when they read Wesley's detailed accounts of these successes. They do not consider that the reason for their preaching being ineffective by comparison may simply be because the present fashion is to address the intellect rather than stir up strong emotion in a congregation. It now seemed possible, in fact, that many of the results which were being achieved by abdication under drugs were essentially the same as those obtained not only by Wesley and other religious leaders, but by modern brainwashers through different explanations would doubtless be given in every case. Also, it seemed as if Parloff provided experimental evidence in his changing of animal behavior, which helped to explain why certain methods of bringing about similar changes in man were successful. Without these experiences in a wartime neurosis center, there would have been no thought of connecting the psychological mechanics used by Parloff in his experiments on animals with Wesley's mass conversion of the common people in 18th century England and of going on to the present study. I just remembered we're also gonna cover, we're gonna go more about how hallucinations happen and auditory hallucinations. That we're gonna go over as much detail on how those happen to see if we find something new. I think that would be really fun. In autumn of 1944, a period of illness enabled several weeks to be spent in following up these clues, studying case histories of sudden conversion and the means of inducing belief in divine possession used by various religious bodies throughout the world. Part of 1947 and 48 was spent by the United States, where an opportunity occurred of studying at first hand some of the revival techniques still practiced in many parts of the country. These seemed relevant to this investigation because they are still extremely effective when used by skillful practitioners. In England, they have practically died out. After 10 years of intermittent study, the fruit of which was several articles, most of them published in scientific journals, a second period of illness enabled these to be rearranged and consolidated for the present book. The crude mechanics of the technique studied form only part of the picture. But because their importance is so often overlooked by those who believe in reasoned argument as far more effective than all other methods of indoctrination, it seems important that the Western world should be given some understanding of them. To watch such methods in action and observe their devastating effect on the mind of ordinary people is such a bewildering and horrible experience that one is tempted to turn one's back on what is a matter of fundamental importance for our cultural future and shout defiantly, "Men are not dogs." As indeed they are not. Dogs, at least, have not yet conducted experiments on man. Meanwhile, however, a large part of the world population is not only being re-indoctrinated, but has had the whole medical system reorientated along parochial lines, partly because the mechanistic and psychological approach to what is more commonly regarded in the West as the province of philosophy and religion has achieved such politically convenient results. In succeeding chapters, evidence will be provided for the general observations made above. It must be emphasized that this book is not primarily concerned with any ethical or political system. Its object is only to show how beliefs, whether good or bad, false or true, can be forcibly implanted in the human brain. such as direct energy weapons are real, or that you're being followed by a lot of people, or a bunch of other shit. Like shopping carts are put there. Actually, oh my god, today I went. Was yesterday? It was this one. Yesterday I went to train my client in her house, and literally there was a shopping cart right in her front yard. Literally. But I'm so over that. Like it all means nothing. Like I have reworked my mind to not care, and it means nothing anymore. Like I used to feel like a negative. Like I used to feel a negative emotion, but I completely untied the negative emotion to that. Whatever. Who gives a fuck? Its object is only to show how beliefs, whether good or bad, false or true, can be forcibly implanted in the human brain, and how people can be switched to arbitrary beliefs altogether opposed to those previously held. Too technical a style has been avoided, because if politicians, priests, psychiatrists, and police forces in various parts of the world continue to use these methods, ordinary people must know what to expect and what the best means are of preserving their former habits of thought and behavior when subjected to unwelcome indoctrination. No claim is made that this book contains any facts that are basically new. Every subject discussed is available for further detailed study in specialist journals and books, to which references are given. But the net has been flung wider than most previous writers on the subject, in an attempt to connect and correlate observations from many apparently unrelated and unconnected sources. The conclusion reached is that simple psychological mechanisms of conversion do exist, and that we, therefore, have much still to learn from a study of brain function about matters that have hitherto been claimed as the province of psychology or metaphysics. The political religious struggle for the mind of man may well be won by whoever becomes the most conversant with the normal and abnormal functions of the brain, and is the readiest to make use of the knowledge gained. So, what do you think? If this doesn't catch your attention, if you have no curiosity on this, then I don't know. Every single target should be curious as hell about the mechanisms of the brain, one or psychology or manipulation. So we're done with the introduction. Tell me what you think in the comments. Update on my current gang stalking situation. Yesterday, before I went to sleep, like lately these past couple of days, I have felt the sensation on my foot a little aggressive. But for a little bit I began to focus on the sensations, and they became stronger. But then it actually felt pain. So then I decided, okay, so I'm gonna move my mind away from it. And then I began watching South Park, and I still felt the sensations, but they weren't intense anymore. I feel like I literally have like a neurologic injury somewhere, because it's like when you have pain, like I just dropped a bar today on my shin, and it just made like a long freaking cut. And if I take my mind off of pain, it stops. It's not as intense as when I focus on it. So it's the same thing. So when I focus on the sensations, they become more painful. I literally think that I have some type of nerve damage, like that gang stalking gives you a nerve damage, and the people that feel direct energy weapons have literally been hurt physically, or physically, that like their nervous system has been hurt, that actually you have physical manifestations of pain. You have phantom pains. it has to be some type of injury that you have. It is. It has to, because it healed. Like, it was really intense, but now it's less, and then it have bursts of sensations here and there. That's fucking sinister, isn't it? That they do something to you that is possibly gonna stay with me the rest of my life. You know, and I'm not gonna lie to you, I was really sad for a little bit, but the truth is that it's a daily reminder. Hey, you gotta make some videos, and you have to tell people about gang stalking, and you have to explain it to them so that they understand it. I am 100% sure that gang stalking causes some type of pain on your body. I'm not sure exactly how. I can't localize it, but I feel like I'm gonna figure it out. We're gonna figure it out together. Anyways, I have to go to work. It's 12:43, and I'm in at 1:15, so I have to like change, and then I have to like get some chicken. If you have a Vaughn's nearby, you should try the habanero chicken at Vaughn's. It's so fucking good. Oh my god, best shit ever. Anyways, thank you for watching. Bye.